Bill Moyers, I think, once asked you the question, can you imagine writing a novel that's not centered about race? And you said, absolutely.
Yes.
Will you?
That's what he asked me. I think, see, I answered the question he didn't pose. You know, Tolstoy writes about race.
Yeah.
All the time. So does Zola, so does James Joyce. Now, if anybody can go up to an imaginary James Joyce and say, you write about race all the time. It's central in your novels. When are you going to write about what? Because you see, the person who asks that question doesn't understand that he or she is also raced. So to ask me when am I going to stop, or when, if I can, is to ask a question that, in a sense, is its own answer. Yes, I can write about white people. White people can write about black people. Anything can happen in art. There are no boundaries there. Having to do it or having to prove that I can do it is what was embarrassing or insulting. In this book, I did. Because in this country, many books, particularly then, 40s, 50s, you could feel the address of the narrator over my shoulder, talking to somebody else, talking to somebody white. I could tell because they're explaining things that they didn't have to explain it. They were talking to me. It was that. It's profound for me. So that I may be, you may be right, maybe I'm over-dramatizing the whole question, which was innocent enough, because the problem of being free to write the way you wish to, without this other racialized gaze, is a serious one for an African-American writer. Very serious.
I think this is one of those times where what you just said, you gave and ennobled an answer, regardless of the significance
that's good.
of the question.
And we're back.
Hello.
You
It's
like
like
that?
we were on a commercial break.
Yeah. Well, it feels like it's been a while because we kind of pushed this recording back a week because of my awesome travels.
Yeah, Gabe had to go be jet set radio superstar, globetrotter, cosmopolitan, flaneur.
You met with Taylor
I
Swift.
saw Taylor Swift, and
You hung out with Taylor's.
We might be dating. I'm not like breaking any news or anything.
Yeah, Gabe's in a polycule now with him, Morgan, and Taylor Swift. Pretty cool.
Yeah. So
pretty cool.
we're pretty open-minded like that. You know what I'm saying. But I do have to say, Taylor, I love you. Whew. Not the most riveting speaker. Shocking.
What was her big sort of takeaway to the new graduates? Can you, if you had to say?
I mean, she talked about herself a lot, and she kind of, I guess the big takeaway was like, it was kind of, I guess I'm trying to remember the details of the speech. I feel like the main takeaway was like, trust your gut. Don't let people, fucking the most kind of basic graduation stuff. Like, don't don't let people tell you can't do something. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, live your power.
Yeah, exactly.
You can start from nothing like me in Connecticut.
Yeah, exactly.
And become
and then buy a house
and
in Watch Hill, Rhode Island.
yeah, right.
Sorry to dox you, Taylor Swift. But yeah, it was a little bit
That's
of
too bad though. I was kind of hoping that she'd be like,
She should have just
really
sang.
interesting.
me too. It was a little bit of a never meet your heroes moment, and
I mean, were you disappointed in the real sense of expecting something different though?
no, not really.
Okay, yeah. My brother's graduating speaker was David Brooks.
Ooh,
Yeah, I guess he also went to New Hampshire, University of New Hampshire.
okay.
But yeah,
I David Brooks is not great.
no, I was the only one who was like I just remember my dad being like, "Wow,
What a powerful, powerful speaker.
wow."
That's all I had to say.
That's a man filled with wisdom. And I was just like, because he was like taking so many L's, like at that time online and just being so stupid.
Did he get Me Too'd or not?
He had something with his wife, and then his girlfriend was like super young.
Okay.
Something
Okay.
like that.
All
Like,
right, I forgot the details.
yeah, and he tried to like write about it, I think, and everyone was just clowning on him for a really long time. Yeah. Anyway.
You should take her to court like Johnny Depp and win back the public opinion.
This spoiler alert. This episode is actually just about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's trial.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, Taylor was fine. She was conversational. It was easy, good, whatever, fine little speech. It was a crowd
And you
pleaser.
got her
know what I
number,
mean?
and now
I
you're
got her
dating
number,
her,
and we're
which is
dating.
cool.
So she's gonna hear this, and we might break up, and she's gonna write a song about it. That my asshole elitist ex-boyfriend hated my NYU commencement speech.
Yeah.
It's gonna be called
Never meet your heroes.
Never Meet Your Heroes. Yeah. It's gonna be called NYU and Me.
Damn nice, dude. Not bad.
So
Not bad.
anyway,
So-
this is the Spinecrackers Podcast, by the way, that you're listening to. We talk about literature and books and the words contained therein. Mm-hmm. And my name is Gabe. I'm one of your hosts.
My name is Matt. I am also 1/3 of the hosts on the show.
My name is Paul, and I am also 1/3 of the hosts.
And I like the idea of that we're all just 1/3 of the host, just one host, like a fucking like Voltron or like
Yeah.
the Holy Trinity. Which, spoiler alert,
What?
I think this book is sort of a reference to that.
Yeah, there's a lot of biblical imagery.
And there's a
Oh,
and there's
when I hear
a
the Holy Trinity, I think
and-
of the Tim Heidecker podcast.
oh,
Now,
and there's sort of
twisted.
a holy or perhaps unholy ghost in this book.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the book opens with Romans 9:25.
Correct. Well, I guess we should say what the book is that we're talking about today, ladies and germs. We're talking about the Pulitzer Prize, or not Pulitzer. I'm sorry, Nobel Prize.
Nobel Prize,
winning novel, Beloved, by Toni Morrison, 1987 original publication. I don't know. I think it's fair to say like towering work of American fiction, sort of put up there as a
One of the big ones.
one of the big ones, especially in modern times, right?
And this was your choice, correct, Gabriel?
This was my choice. Yes.
Defend yourself.
Okay. I don't know. I need to defend myself. Per
I'm
se.
just, I'm joking.
Alex, racist, but
yeah, it's more like, why didn't we pick it sooner?
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can explain myself. I mean, one, I had never read it before, and that's a blind spot that I wanted to remedy. I have read. I did read The Bluest Eye, many years ago, and remember liking it, but don't have a lot of detailed thoughts on it today. I think that might have been in college, anyway, I don't remember. But so that, and I think at this juncture in American cultural history, where all of these laws and pushes to fucking like ban books in schools and critical race theory and all this, any discussion about like slavery or racism or like the actual history of America. I thought it would be a good time to kind of highlight this book, because this is one of the books that's always on those lists of like books that they're trying to like not let them teach to kids. I think
I did not know that. That's absolutely crazy.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. By
This,
the way,
I didn't realize this was on the chopping block in that.
oh, this is like one of the most frequently cited ones that they don't want taught in schools.
I mean, there is some spicy stuff going on in here for sure.
Well, it's. I mean, yeah. I think
I don't
like,
get it though.
Well, there was a commercial. I think it was in the Virginia governor's race a couple years ago where they had like a mom be like, Toni Morrison turned my son into a soy cock liberal like critical race theorist, and like one of the people running for governor in Virginia like used that in a political commercial or something, and it's like, what the fuck.
Damn.
So yeah, I mean, just to put my cards on the table, if you have any sympathies towards banning this book or books in general or critical race theory from schools, you can fuck off and stop listening to this podcast. You're a child and you're an anti-intellectual, and fuck you.
Yeah. Word.
So there's that. And you know, so anyway, I just thought that it was important to read this book in with that context in mind, because it's something that I see. You know, I'm in academia and I'm in education specifically, and so people, you know, it's a conversation that comes up. And yeah, I mean, I think like the book is very difficult to read, and I could understand people being disturbed reading it. But a lot of great literature is like that. And in terms of just like, you know, generating like understanding about something like slavery and its effects, it's indispensable to me, a book like this.
Yeah, the word disturbing is definitely the thing that comes to mind first. I had read this book in college as part of this sort of like American literature course. Yeah, and it was one of those things that like like disturbing. Yeah, just like sits, and like the things that happen and the turns of phrase and the writing itself just sort of like winds its way into your brain and just like creeps you out. But it's effective, you know. It's like clearly the intention of Morrison to do so, and to like I think just.
She says in the foreword or the preface or whatever, right? Like, sure, that her goal was to have the reader feel like they had been kidnapped, right? And like thrown into like an alien world.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially, not essentially, but it's in part a ghost story, right? It takes a kind of horror, basically kind of like a horror thing, like a horror theme.
There's like multiple like exorcism scenes. So definitely some like horror tropes in the play. I mean, I could see, you know, wanting to like, you know, a book like this, depending on the age of the people you're teaching it to, you definitely need to, you know, scaffold it, to use an education
you gotta
jargon.
Equip these kids with dealing with it. Yeah.
I wouldn't advocate for just like throwing them in blind.
Do you guys know what level of education this book is taught?
I think high school normally, or sometimes high school, often college.
Yeah, I mean, I read this as like a sophomore.
Yeah, in college.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could see some kind of like content warning, trigger warning, whatever, which we should also probably do. Just FYI, if you know anything about the book, we're gonna be talking about slavery and racial violence and sexual violence, and it's fucked. So yeah, and also you know, just nota bene, we're all white guys here, and yeah, so that's, you know, just always gotta just fucking note that, because you know, whatever we say is needs to be, you know, discounted by that much because of that fact, I suppose.
I think that I wasn't exactly like disturbed. It's like not the right word for me. It was mostly like, it was like a clear image and depiction of what I suspected. You know, like you always like suspect there's horrible evils that took place, but this book just kind of like blatantly goes through what I felt like I already like, just suspected and knew about that time. And it's like, what time does it take place? Like 10 years before the Civil War?
I think
the span of it, including the memories, is pre antebellum to post war.
Yeah, so
Civil War.
I think when it opens, if I'm not mistaken, it's 1873.
Yeah, that sounds right. And then Sweet Home was like 50s, 1850s or something like that. Because they're talking about I think the Fugitive Slave Act, right? Like, and the sort of tensions that was drumming up in the country.
Which was pre-Lincoln, right? I think it was the president.
It was before the
pre-Lincoln.
war. Yeah, it was like a thing that sort of like ramped up tensions and was was claimed to be a big reason for the war, sort of.
Yeah.
Although it,
Yeah.
in hindsight, it definitely just seems like an inevitability. But
There were
But when Lincoln was elected, he actually agreed to continue with the act so that he wouldn't like lose the South immediately.
initially, yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, apparently
But he
there
was kinda
were
kidding.
multiple JK
JK
Fugitive Slave Act JK. Apparently there were multiple acts with that name or variations on it. So not 1793 and 1850, and then repealed in 1864.
right. Yeah,
So yeah,
But it basically means if you were a slave that escaped to the North, Southern police forces had the right to go find you and take you
or
back.
just literally bounty hunters and just like citizen. Like you gotta
slave hunters.
reward.
That was like a profession that people did like in the North.
And they
So-
call it they call it the misery, I believe, in this book. They just call it the misery or something like that. I think like what I liked was the idea, like body and soul, right? Like that concept. Those two things are so intertwined in a way that like I hadn't experienced so effectively conveyed before.
Yeah,
Like Raw, just because you have to do this thing. It's like these people are like spiritually broken. But they have this like obviously like they're contending with these things, and like then just like the physical violent aspect of all of this stuff, like just what it is to have a body in pain, and just like, but those two things are so like close to each other in this book.
Yes.
In a way that I think is like another reason why it was somewhat unsettling. Like I've never really encountered something like that done so effectively.
Yeah, it's a very anti-Cartesian book, right? Like which is this sort of a there's a lot of work done in these days in excuse me, philosophy, trying to feminist philosophy and critical, like not critical race theory specifically, but philosophy of race and so on, where it's like that's a very Western white male conception, the body and mind separation, going back to Descartes. And this book is way on the other end of the spectrum, and I think you're totally right that it conveys that truth really really effectively. So maybe I'll just say a little bit, like very brief plot summary, full spoilers ahead as
Do
always. Excuse me. So basically the book opens with a woman, Setha, and her daughter, Denver, who are living in Cincinnati in the home of Setha's mother-in-law, Baby Sugg. Suggs? I forget.
Suggs.
Suggs, yeah,
Suggs.
sorry. Baby Suggs. And they have escaped slavery from Kentucky, from a place called Sweet Home, and are living there alone. Baby Suggs has died by the time when the book opens. Although we go back to times when she was alive, the book is very non-linear. It jumps around time frames a lot. It jumps around perspectives. It's third person. It's first person at times. It's very an amalgamation of perspectives and settings and times.
Yeah, well, one of the things is, right, like minds, like people's like memories as they're called, and minds are not distinct, and neither is time itself. Like the past very clearly it still exists and is like strong in points and stuff like that. So
Yeah. So they're living alone, and essentially what happens is one of the other slaves from Sweet Home makes his way to Cincinnati. The Paul D, who is presumably the last of the surviving, it's in the book. They're called Sweet Home Men, right?
Yeah.
Sweet Home Boys.
I think
it's Sweet Home Men.
Yeah. And we'll talk about Sweet Home in more detail later, and like what that really means, because it was a bit of a unique situation for like a slave plantation back then. But he makes his way there. Seth's husband is disappeared, presumed dead, although not fully confirmed, I don't think, ever.
Yeah, there's a question mark on that the whole time.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I loved about this book is that there are so many question marks. There's so many like kind of like figures that are spectral beyond the ghost, quote unquote, another question mark, the quote unquote ghost, who is another main character in the book, and Seth's husband Hallie is one of those figures. So Paul D shows up. Setha and her daughter Denver have been kind of socially ostracized even by the black community in Cincinnati for reasons that are explained later, and basically don't leave their house anymore. They think the house is haunted. Paul D sort of exorcises the ghost. Him and Setha have a sort of sexual kind of romantic relationship for a while. They go out to this carnival, and then they come back, and there's this strange woman sitting on their front porch, right? Or sitting on the steps of their front porch, or it might be a tree stump or something. I forget exactly where she is near the house.
And she's described as like walking out of the river or the water.
Yeah, she's wet. She's dripping wet, like really kind of...
and she's weak. She like can't move.
And she's in nice clothes.
Yeah, in nice clothes, kind of like, but frail. And she tells them her name is Beloved. And this is eerie because, well, whatever. We'll get into the details. Anyway, Beloved sort of embeds herself in the family. She winds up sort of seducing Paul D. They have sex. Paul D kind of starts to feel weird and like feels like he can't stay in the house. So he leaves. And then the relationship between Setha and Beloved starts to become like codependent in a very kind of scary way. Denver starts to get pushed out. And it's basically about how they deal with this strange figure in their home, and attempting to sort of rescue Denver is attempting to sort of rescue Setha from what she sees as the pernicious influence of this figure, who it is heavily implied may be the ghost of Setha's third child, who she killed, because when they first made it to Cincinnati, when she left Sweet Home, she was pregnant with a child. She had the baby on, I believe, on the boat as they were crossing the river.
So she had on the riverbed with that random poor white girl.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
She has it on the riverbed. Yeah. Where she's found by what was that girl's name? Amy.
Amy, I think. Yeah.
We'll talk about that as well. And anyway, so as we referenced the Fugitive Slave Act, Setha and her children are found in Cincinnati by school teacher who was who took over running Sweet Home after the original owners were either dead or ill. And Setha decides that she'd rather her children be dead than go back into slavery. So she takes them out into the shed and starts trying to kill them. She only succeeds in killing one. And that may or may not be who Beloved is when she comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I read the Romans quotation?
Yeah, please.
So this is what starts the book, the little thing. 60 million and more, I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not beloved. Romans 9:25.
Yeah. So I think the 60 million and more part is not part of the quote, right? That's just the dedication.
Oh, maybe. Sorry, I have a.
No. I mean, it's important to read because as my understanding is that dedication is a reference to all of the people who died not in slavery, but on the Middle Passage, like on the boats on the way over from Africa.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have a janky PDF, so excuse me.
No, it's all good.
My copy is like the 60 million and more is on one page, and then you flip it, and it's the Romans.
So yeah, I mean that's the thing, and I know Morrison was describing like the initial, like she was inspired to write this story, having like read some historical account basically of a mother killing her children because it was like perceived as a kindness in this perverse, horrific situation to do, knowing what she knew would be like in store for them.
Margaret, I believe Margaret Garner was the name of the.
Oh,
the real life woman that the story is loosely based on.
Right, and
Yeah,
that
I
and the
thought I was
and the
gonna be the only
Garners.
person that knew
That knew that?
but you guys both do.
Sorry, we boned up, dude. And the Garners are the name of the sort of like empathetic, sort of more progressive plantation owners, correct? That run Sweet Home.
The original owners of Sweet Home, yeah. Which was interesting.
Huh. So yeah, I mean, just a little tidbit. Yeah.
So where to start with this? I think that it's and I've in my overlong plot summary barely scratched the surface of a lot of the stuff that goes on in the book.
I mean, the big questions for me was like what, like morally, how do you judge the act of killing your child for those reasons? And the other big question for me is like, what exactly did Beloved, who was Beloved? What did she represent?
Well, I think that the past, like, it's funny, like taking a ghost and like a horror, a sort of a horror entity, and applying it to just the horror of that whole situation, and the sort of just imminent, I don't know what the word is, but that just like the tangibility of that past never dying.
Right.
And so on, one of many ways that I saw Beloved, was just that destructive relationship one can have with the past, right? Like they're codependent, but it becomes increasingly parasitical, and just killing of Setha.
Well, even to the point where by the end of the story, Beloved, like they're essentially like use the term parasitic, and they're basically like they're changing in size in an inverse relationship, right? Like Beloved is growing and getting larger and is indeed pregnant, and Setha is like shrinking and getting smaller and sort of starving.
Is Beloved pregnant?
That's how I read it.
I thought she just had a big
how I
belly,
read
and
it
it was
too.
like just like it looked perversely like she was pregnant.
I don't know if it's ever explicitly said that she's pregnant.
Because when you said in bed, I definitely thought of a tick.
Oh yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
just sucking the lifeblood out of somebody.
Well, I think that that's a totally like valid reading of it, because I mean, again, there's a lot of ambiguity in this text, right? If whether or not Beloved is actually a ghost or a real person who's just sort of happens to be, because there's a couple references in sort of passing references in the text to a girl who had like escaped sexual slavery in the vicinity of Cincinnati. And
Ella.
Yeah, that's right. And
People
so,
kind of assume that because Beloved is like, she's described as having like clean feet, like feet that have like basically never been walked on, and she has like no scars,
Smooth
like,
hands.
That's one of the things that like when they first meet her, like Paul D and Denver and Setha, like that's one thing they like can't stop noticing and thinking about. It's just like why is your skin like this?
which I think is interesting, because of course like that could be compatible with like this kind of like birth, like a baby's skin, right? Like Beloved being born out of the river, coming from the other side, but also compatible with like being locked in a basement and never leaving or walking around. You know what I mean? Like,
And she also importantly does have a scar. Her second smile, as they call it, on her neck, where the hacksaw was, used, which is the heaviest implication that there is, that it's the child. And also the fact that she would be roughly the same age that Beloved would have been had she not been killed.
which
I guess we should
I think it's
point
like
out,
it's
too.
like 18, right?
18.
Yeah, Denver's like 19, so I think, I don't know, Beloved's like, 17 or 18.
Well, and
Yeah.
we also should point out, I guess, now that she calls herself Beloved, right? But they didn't like the baby that was killed. That wasn't her name. It was just the only words that Setha could afford for the headstone were the
Yeah.
it was only beloved.
Because she heard at some other funeral, right, the preacher say dearly beloved or something, right, and that was like
Right.
the phrase that she remembered, but she could only afford the one word to put on the
Yeah.
the importantly pink headstone.
So I mean, just for, all those facts added up. For me, I read it as this is a ghost. This is definitely a ghost. It's not like a switcheroo, and this is like a real person. You know, I just read it as like this is a ghost.
Yeah, and what were you gonna say, Matt?
Oh no. Just like her finding a body was fascinating to me too. Like her recorporation, or however you want to call it, into flesh was just like it's just like the vaguest, eeriest accounting of that idea that I've heard. I was almost thinking of this is, I mean, whatever. This, like, did you ever watch the original Hellraiser?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you remember when the guy like he's like bones, and then like the flesh starts to like grow around? Like I almost saw
Oh,
that
it's one of my
process in
favorite
my
parts.
head. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that.
because she keeps talking about seeing the man with no skin that's coming for her, which is presumably some sort of like steward of the dead.
Yes.
Who is like, okay, like we knew you'd be back. Like, come on, you know.
Man, that fucking, maybe we should save detailed discussion of this part for the Patreon, but the that scene where there's like a sequence of chapters where it's going from Setha to Denver to Beloved's like perspective, and like the Beloved chapter where she's talking about like being in the other world or on the other side was, I think, the scariest depiction of like hell or like post-death experience that I've ever fucking read.
Well,
That
she was
was
a
real
killed,
bad.
murdered child, so you know, in old school Christianity, wouldn't she be in purgatory? It's what it
Yeah.
felt like she was in, right? Like,
Yeah, that's true. Because
unbaptized, like sort of little babies would be in this sort
But,
of
I mean-
limbo.
Right, because
I always thought
people are constantly like disappearing and entering that world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It was such a terrible depiction. It seemed like a state of being that you could not get out of. You know, like, well, purgatory always seems to be depicted as like, oh, you could get out. But this was just like extreme horrible darkness.
Yeah, I think that's limbo. It's just it's nothing.
Right, and when she's there, she's constantly waiting. Like, you know, when she gets into the quote unquote real world again, like of course they kind of ask her like, where are you from? Like what's the deal, and who are you? And the only thing she can really remember is a bridge, right? And waiting on the bridge.
And the book is, it's not like there's a wait for this entity to sort of enter the picture. Like pretty immediately they're describing this kind of, you can already tell, like somewhat ostracized mother and daughter with some sort of history and some bad blood with the community. And then this ghost is just introduced as like a poltergeist, almost like audibly walking through the house. It like, there's a really gruesome accounting of the ghost getting angry and like smashing the pet dog of the house and its eye popping out of its face.
Yes.
And Setha having to push it back in.
Yes.
And like, I mean, and then like Setha also has two sons who immediately get the fuck out of there. Basically, because it's a haunted house and it's horrible, and they leave, and it's just another addition to her sense of abandonment and the kind of
It's also
crucible
kind of
her
hinted at
past.
that they left because they were terrified of Setha murdering their
True.
sister.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
What,
Is it dual?
Howard and Bugler, right?
Yeah.
And they're gone. We don't meet them again, right?
We don't meet them at all. They're another.
Wow, they're kind of like the Blue Wizards in Lord of the Rings.
Oh my God.
God already.
Do not relate this to your favorite things.
I'm sorry, it's a heavy episode. I got to make some stupid jokes.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I think, well, and they're another example of these characters, these entities that are sort of, you know, spectral echoes in the text and the lives of all these people, right? Like there's Halle, there's the sons, there's Beloved herself, there's baby Suggs, who, you know, and then so I think like again, like we talk a lot these days about like generational trauma, right? And for marginalized groups and slavery specifically. And like, this is such a just fucking, I don't want to resort to like obvious words like powerful or whatever, but it just feels fucking true, in terms of describing that sort of experience. And like you said, Matt, the way that it echoes physically, there's detailed descriptions of the scars on Setha's back, and they're shaped like a tree and like roots. And the way that this shit has rooted and embedded itself in the experience of Black people in America, I think there's a lot of really, strong metaphors for that, and throughout the book.
Yeah, Morrison is such a good writer. Like, just like so imagistically layered, and it just slowly accumulates even within the like span of this book in a way that feels like weighs on you.
I just kind of want to read a little bit from it. I think I want to read. It's going to be a little bit long, but I think it's worth it just because, again, she's such a good writer. And I think one of my favorite parts of the book was the transition from the like carnival scene, which is this really like beautiful, hopeful, like fun, like it's like one of the first times that Setha and Denver have gotten out of the house, and like Setha is feeling like hopeful about Paul D and like potentially making a life together and sort of rebuilding. And then
as soon as that happens, Beloved comes.
The
which
next
makes me think this is like a horror book.
Yeah, it is.
It kind of is
totally a horror,
is, yeah.
horror like trope. So this is from the end of that the carnival chapter into Beloved's first appearance. So they're talking about all the people at the carnival. So this is talking about Paul D. He slapped his knee when Giant danced with Midget, when Two-Headed Man talked to himself. He bought everything Denver asked for and much she did not. He teased Setha into tents she was reluctant to enter, stuck pieces of candy she didn't want between her lips. When Wild African Savage shook his bars and said wah wah, Paul D told everybody he knew him back in Roanoke. Paul D made a few acquaintances, spoke to them about what work he might find. Setha returned the smiles she got. Denver was swaying with delight, and on the way home, although leading them now, the shadows of three people still held hands. And then the next chapter opens. A fully dressed woman walked out of the water. She barely gained the dry bank of the stream before she sat down and leaned against a mulberry tree. All day and all night she sat there, her head resting on the trunk in a position abandoned enough to crack the brim in her straw hat. Everything hurt but her lungs most of all. Sopping wet and breathing shallow, she spent those hours trying to negotiate the weight of her eyelids. The day breeze blew her dress dry, the night wind wrinkled it. Nobody saw her emerge or came accidentally by. If they had, chances are they would have hesitated before approaching her. Not because she was wet or dozing or had what sounded like asthma, but because amid all that she was smiling. It took her the whole of the next morning to lift herself from the ground and make her way through the woods, past the giant temple of boxwood to the field, and then the yard of the slate-gray house. Exhausted again, she sat down on the first handy place, a stump not far from the steps of 124. By then, keeping her eyes open was less an effort. She could manage it for a full 2 minutes or more. Her neck, its circumference no wider than a parlor service saucer, kept bending, and her chin brushed the bit of lace edging her dress. And that transition was so creepy to me, and just very horror tropey, in a good way. And of course, the reference to 124 there, that's the address of the house where Setha lives, and where Baby Suggs had lived before. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
I was like, numerically, you just said like the shadow of the three.
Yes.
And then the 124 being, skipping a number and like discussing the hidden quaternity in the Trinity, basically.
100%.
And also, isn't that a sort of exponential doubling as well? That was the only other idea I could think of with the address.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I guess it would be, right? Like it's I don't know anything about math, but it surely is some sort of sequence of numbers that are mathematically significant. Like, right? Like
1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4.
4,
Yeah.
and then you go up and you create a sort of asymptotic curve, right?
Right. which I
don't know
think,
what to do with that idea. But
well,
that
I
just-
mean, I think it could also be a way in which like some of these generational historical traumas tend to snowball and escalate and linger, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's very creepy. I really just liked this line even in the first chapter. Well, I mean, first of all, the opening line is 124 was spiteful, full of a baby's venom.
Yeah, so good.
But also just sort of more at the bottom, winter in Ohio was especially rough if you had an appetite for color. Sky provided the only drama, and counting on a Cincinnati horizon for life's principal joy was reckless indeed.
Love that line.
That's
Little
great
funny.
for like anywhere in the Midwest, to be honest.
Yeah, true.
That's a great winter description of anywhere.
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned color there, Matt, too, right? Like, because color is, of course, like one of the. I don't know if it's like a major theme of the book, but Baby Suggs, as we see in flashbacks, she sort of after Setha kills Beloved, she kind of starts deteriorating mentally and physically, and she kind of won't leave her bed, and she just kind of sits there, and she becomes very, cynical, understandably, right? Given her like experience, and she becomes, focused on like all she wants to do is just meditate on different colors, basically. And sorry. And
Ew.
I think so. Yeah, I know. Sorry. And I think that that's a really important sort of dimension to the book that again I don't know fully what to make of, but yeah.
Yeah, the murder is just sort of this crippling blow to this woman who has, like, gone through so much that you wouldn't think that anything could, and she's so, like, primed for horror and violence and disappointment that she just seems ready for anything, and then, yeah, she just and she's like she's kind of this, like, sort of wise forest preacher, sort of holy woman to the community in Cincinnati, but yeah, this murder just ends her.
Well, it's like she was murdered twice though, and she has more of a physical reaction after Beloved is murdered the second time, and I think that's partially because, she rationalized why she killed the baby.
Oh, you're talking about Setha now, not Baby
Not
Suggs.
Baby Suggs.
Oh, I thought you were talking about baby. I thought you were talking about Setha being in the bed at the end.
Oh, well, she is at the end also, right? She kind of repeats the cycle of Baby Suggs, even I believe in Baby Suggs' bed, right?
Yeah, she starts also wanting to like just meditate on colors and things that are presumably, but still not detached from the horrors of reality and that they live in and stuff like that.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about that scene at the very end.
Well, finish your thought anyway.
No, I was going to say I just thought that Setha was reacting, like I said, to Beloved's death the second time, feeling like the loss of it in the way that she didn't necessarily feel it the first time, because she rationalized the killing, and I think rightly so. I mean, that's why like towards the beginning I brought up like the moral reality of killing your child in this scenario, in this world, in this life as like a slave. I wholeheartedly like agreed with her decision to do that, which makes it more of a horrific tale to me, because like I think that there's actually historical evidence of it happening, and it I'm sure it probably happened a lot, but to be like punished by a ghost for that just seemed kind of like a horror trope, like being judged by your moral
Grudge.
conundrum.
Being
judged by the grudge.
It's really judged by the grudge. I mean, it's crazy when your future is essentially as certain as the past. Like that
that's a good way to
seems
put
like
it.
that seems like such a just like you're just a bug pinned now between two certainties. And it's just like, what do you do in that reality, which is like a perversion of what what reality should be for people,
Right. Well, and of course that's like was the reality of slavery as well, right? And like there's Paul D, who has his own kind of coping mechanisms, right? He talks about his like rusted shut tobacco box, where he keeps all of his trauma and memories, and he's very much the archetype of like, I'm just not talking about any of this shit ever.
Yeah, stoical, silent guy.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's one point where I forget if it's in a flashback or in like a real time moment, but he's talking about, you know, feeling like like just like an animal who's like pinned and stuck, and then of course he also starts to feel the influence of Beloved, and he talks about himself. I forget the exact phrasing, and I don't think I highlighted it, but like as being like a doll, like a rag doll, like being able to like be picked up and put down like wherever, like by this girl. So yeah, there's a lot about kind of not being in control of your own life, right?
Yeah, but it makes me think of like what exactly do you guys think Beloved represents? Not just Setha's dead child. It's like to me Beloved represented like a past that is a ghost. Like everyone's past is a ghost, but to make that ghost into something that is flesh and blood, you make it into something that is real and like something that you can't escape from. And to me, that's what Beloved was to every character that ended up interacting with her, like for more than a few moments. You know, it was like something that like kind of drove them crazy because like they almost like couldn't look away from her, and they couldn't look away from their past. Like he could no longer just like keep those things in his tin box. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a way of talking about like, because I think you're spot on in the sense that like the move from like spectrality to physicality is a huge one. And I think like by the end of the book, the community who had sort of shunned Setha, A, because of what she had done, and also B, the other sort of bad blood thing that started the ball rolling arguably was this party that Baby Suggs had.
Yeah.
Right? That everyone in the community like kind of thought was a little bit like ostentatious and like overly flaunting her like social status and her role in the community like too much, and so everyone kind of soured on the family after that. And then Setha's thing happened, because the other thing with Baby Suggs is that the house that she has was essentially, she was gifted the house. I mean, she does pay rent and stuff, but like she got it by virtue of being brought to Cincinnati by Mr. Garner, the sweet home owner, and him kind of getting her in with some like quote unquote, right, like nice white people in Cincinnati who let her rent this house. And of course, like that's, you know, so there's complicated feelings about that in the community in the first place. You know, because the reason Baby Suggs was allowed to go was because her son, Hallie, said, I will like work off whatever she would have been worth if you allow her to leave. And Garner agrees. So anyway,
again, not a normal scenario either, right? Like that,
yes.
that agreement even being made.
Yeah. I want to talk about the Garners, a lot more. And maybe that'll be a Patreon thing.
Let's save it. Let's save that.
Because I think that opens a lot of rusted tobacco boxes.
Oh yeah, for sure. The tin boxes do get cracked open.
Yeah. But so the point I was trying to make before I got distracted was about physicality and spectrality, and I think the physicality of it is what pushes everybody in the community over the edge, because they're like when Denver finally goes out and like kind of asks for help for her family, which is like the first time she's ever left the house alone. People hear about it and they're like, man, being haunted by a ghost is one thing, but if they show up with a body, fuck that. Like that's a bridge too far, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was actually the only moment in the book where I kind of chuckled, because it's not a chuckly book, but that one lady was just like, she's like, I'm okay with ghosts, but like if there's a body, we gotta fucking kill this ghost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if there's some like, you know, greedy girl living ghost thing living there, you know, it's just like, wow, this lady's been through a lot. They do kind of like make this sentence of like she did her penance too, because
yes, exactly.
I do like how it is sort of borderline petty, the like ostentation and like how it just made everyone annoyed, and then the inclusion of like the far more like deep, just sort of resuscitating of trauma and all that kind of stuff. You know, as they said, anything dead coming back to life hurts. So
Great line.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's true of history, right, and the past. And like I watched a couple interviews with Morrison, and she was like, I did not want to write this book at all because it's just like, you know, such a difficult thing to you know, talk about, and you know, even for someone, even for a you know, a black woman in America, she talked about having felt like, I don't even know if I am qualified to talk about this because I didn't actually go through it, right? And
Right.
having that feeling, but then I think the way she does it with the past and the way that it echoes and reflects in the present was a sort of a compromise for her in that approach, you know, because of course it still affects black people in America, like that's what the whole book is about. And so I think that was her way of getting around that hurdle for herself.
Yeah, and there's also a bit of like, you know, when like what you said, Matt, like the past actually coming alive is like too much. But I also kind of believe that Morrison's trying to say that like it's never actually dead though, and I think that's part of the
100%.
reason why she's so good at like encapsulating that voice. It's like alive in her, you know.
I mean, she's doing something here that kind of is just like the embodiment of that idea in general. Like she's writing a book about a past that she admits she did not live through and like feels complicatedly about that for her own sake. And then sort of the message of the book a little bit is also like you got to forgive yourself for some of this stuff. You can't let this sit so heavily on you that you just like wither away. But at the same time, we're, you know, sort of not ironically, but just, you know, we're dealing directly with a past that is traumatic for the United States and for black people in the United States, like within, and then that message is embedded in that. So, you know what I mean? Like it's doing both things at once.
Well, and I also think giving Beloved a corporeal body is a way of really driving home the reality of the past, that it isn't just this like specter. It isn't just this thing that is kind of dead or disappeared or something that you can just kind of live with, but it is real and has real effects day to day today, right? And I think that's part of what she's trying to get at by making Beloved a physical being rather than just like a, you know, specter.
Can I read a chunk?
Go off.
Yeah.
It's also a little long, but it pertains to what we were just saying. I was talking about time. It's so hard for me to believe in it. Some things go, pass on, some things just stay. I used to think it was my rememory. You know, some things you forget, other things you never do. But it's not. Places. Places are still there. If a house burns down, it's gone, but the place, the picture of it stays. And not just in my rememory, but out there in the world. What I remember is a picture floating around out there outside of my head. I mean, even if I don't think it, even if I die, the picture of what I did or knew or saw is still out there, right in the place where it happened. Can other people see it? Asked Denver. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Someday you be walking down the road and you hear something or see something going on so clear, and you think it's you thinking it up, a thought picture, but no. It's when you bump into a memory that belongs to somebody else. Where I was born before I came here, that place is real. It's never going away, even if the whole farm, every tree and grass blade of it dies. That seems to me to be like the working idea of the past, just sort of literally just existing on top of, in layers, the present.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the other things, again, like the layering of the past and the reality of the past, one of the things that Setha talks about, and when she's talking to Denver about Sweet Home, it may be near where what you read. I don't think I highlighted it, but she talks about like one of the reasons she didn't, like, if she ever went back to Sweet Home or back to that place, it wouldn't be, you know, a memory of the past. It would be literally reliving that same cycle, right? And similarly, when Beloved comes back, and this idea, it's more visceral than just a memory. It's an actual reliving, right? And I think, again, giving Beloved a body, reliving. She's alive again with a physical body. Yeah.
And Denver sort of represents like the next generation having lived in the relatively privileged position of a free life, and in she
Very relative.
Yes, of course, but like you know what I mean. Like I think she still serves that like function of like she kind of rolls her eyes and gets annoyed initially with her mom flighting off, and when Paul D comes, she's like, "Oh my God, they're gonna talk about Sweet Home," and like I don't care. Let's talk about me.
She's just
Yeah,
like
classic kid,
Yeah.
classic
teenager.
kid teenager.
Like boring old people talking about like doing farming somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, your life
And
was so hard. What about me?
Oh, we get it. You walked uphill both ways. We get it. And so, like, I think importantly, she is kind of that proxy sort of interpreter of things she's not gone through, in the way that Morrison is, and like
True.
grows and matures, and like realizes she does have to fucking deal with it because it will be a huge problem if she doesn't.
Yes, and yeah, her sort of transformation through the book is really interesting, and we can talk about it more because, believe it or not, we're rapidly approaching the hour,
Oh wow!
and I feel like we've barely gotten anywhere with this.
Oh baby, no.
Yeah, yeah. Any other thoughts you guys want to get in this main segment here?
Not super short ones, no.
Yeah, Paul.
In the Patreon segment, I do want to talk about the psychological elements of Beloved. 'Cause
Yes.
to me, she's just like so many different things besides the daughter, and it's like almost like a limitless depiction of what she could be. So.
Yeah, her sexuality, her relationship with Paul D, is really interesting to me. I guess that's part of Paulie D, my man.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because one of the reasons that I thought she was pregnant at the end is that I thought it was implied that it was Paulie D who got her pregnant because they do have sex, right?
That makes sense, yeah.
And it also would have made sense in the sense that she was like sapping Setha's life and was like growing in sort of size based off that life force also, right?
And it almost seemed like if she did give birth, that would be like a real person. Like Beloved actually wasn't ever a real person. She was like a real flesh and blood specter, but like she would have had to be pregnant and give birth to be like next generation of whatever she is.
It was
You'd
sort
have
of like
something
her
alive there.
her final like task in order to become fully real would be to give birth or something like that, right?
Which totally sounds like a freaking sci-fi horror novel moment,
totally.
right?
It's like in the what is it? The Night of the Living Dead, the remake where they have a zombie baby.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, as we've already suggested, we have a lot more to talk about. So this Patreon segment may be kind of long. But if you want to hear that, if you want to hear the full discussion, that's over on the Spinecrackers Patreon for as little as $2 a month. You can support the show, get access to the Discord and the full episodes. It's poppin', and we would love to see you over there. And
come on down.
Come on down. We have fun. So with that said, yeah, I mean, I have a long list of shit I want to talk about. I want to talk about this book's relationship to Faulkner, kind of.
Okay.
Just because that, well, whatever, I'll leave it for that. I want to talk about the idea of animality in the book, because that's a huge sort of
Yeah, school teacher's whole thing is interesting. Yeah.
And that's kind of like the falling out that Setha and Paul D have initially.
I want to talk about some of the high school, college sophomore review, like 5-minute video reviews that I watched on YouTube. That were
Yes. Please.
That sounds great.
What like is going on? Like,
There's like some red in this book. What does that mean?
I was fucking sad when I read it. Just 1 out of 5. Yep.
So if you want to hear all that, again, come on over to the Patreon. So now we are going to do the thing as arguably inappropriate as it feels. I might as well end the discussion like this with whatever levity we can muster. Da, da,
I don't feel comfortable singing the song. I don't feel comfortable singing the song.
Okay, fine. We won't sing the song, but we will do the thing.
Everywhere you go, everywhere you do, it's a high note. I mean, it was a full house.
Yeah. Well, it was also an empty house.
Yeah, both. Damn.
All right. So if you are new to the show, at the end of every episode, most episodes, I should say, because the last episode we didn't, because it wouldn't have made any sense with Murnane. But we take the main characters from the book that we just read and we sort them into their respective Harry Potter houses.
I will say, I feel like we should not do it. I mean, we decided not to do it last time. I kind of don't want to, but like before the episode, we discussed it. We were like, we should do it. But now I'm like, ugh.
Will you say we're doing some sort of violence to the book itself at this point? I think we only wanted to get to the joke that Beloved was moaning Myrtle.
That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
That's it. That's the big joke.
We just get that out there.
That's the joke. Fine. We can skip the rest of the segment because it's arguably not appropriate. But yeah,
It just doesn't feel right.
that was that was the joke we felt like we had to get in there.
Worth it.
All right, fine. So then the next segment would be the Scrabble Word, which is where we pick a word from the book that was either new to us, that we thought was interesting, that we didn't know, or one that would just be epic to drop in a Scrabble game. Who's got one?
I forgot.
I
Matt forgot.
I forgot.
I tailed my pages, but I didn't circle the word. So
All right,
I'm
well,
looking for it.
I'll go first because I do have one, and my word is taffeta.
Oh, the material?
Taffeta. Yeah, that was a new word to me. I'd never heard it. It's a type of fabric, and it's mentioned in the book. It's like, I guess it's like similar to silk. It's in reference to, we talked about Beloved's smooth skin, and it's one of the terms that's employed to kind of talk about what her skin is like.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it would have been like a
is
type
it
of cheese.
is it taffeta? I don't know. I think it might be taffeta.
I don't know, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
I'm
Paul.
sorry, I might have to wait till I can't find it.
All right,
I might have
that's
to wait
fine.
I'll find it for the Patreon.
Bums.
I'll just go ahead and use the word churn because I just like it.
Great word and decent Scrabble word.
It's a decent one. CHURN.
What is that? 9 points.
Is it?
Yeah, H is 4, C is 3.
Oh, I found mine.
And
Depending on where you put it on the board.
well, of
obviously.
course, yeah. I'm just talking about the base values of the letters. Yeah.
Base value, nothing. Raw, 9 points.
All right, Paul. What's yours?
I found mine. Mine is Rancor because of Star Wars.
Oh my god.
Nice.
It means bitterness or resentfulness, especially when long-standing. Which I always thought of this word as just being from Star Wars, as being a Star Wars monster.
Well,
so that's
now
pretty,
you know. Yeah.
The more
knowledge
you know.
is power.
Knowledge is power, baby.
Knowledge is power.
All right, that means there's only one thing left to do, and
It's
that's I get to go last because I picked the book, so that means
Okay.
tomorrow. This is where we give the book a score out of 5. 1 being absolute garbage. My life was actively worse because I read this book. 2 being like pretty bad, didn't love it. 3 average, good. Oops, sorry, cut out. 4 very good. 5 life changing. Classic.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where first of all, yeah, like I said before, I had read it before. This is the only Morrison book I've read, but this is the one that I did read before, and it was really good then, and it is really good now. Like I said, there's an effect wrought on my mind that this book achieves, and that I've not experienced really, and that's always a high mark for me. Like, I just think it really lives up to its reputation, and when I say disturbing, again, it might sound like a cliche to say that word, but there's so little that like actually does that. Like, maybe I'll say it flippantly sometimes, but like, I don't know. An affecting piece of literature. and one that deserves the standing that it has, like, completely. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 4.5.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah. So Matt, would you say that you beloved this book?
I beloved it. I absolutely beloved it. Would read again, would recommend to friends. Also, it's funny, I was just thinking about the fact that, like, this ain't on Oprah's book club. Oprah acted in the fucking film adaptation, so that's a
Oh, is that true?
yeah, she
didn't even
played
know that.
Setha.
I didn't even
Yeah.
really
So
know
it's
there
not,
was.
it's not in her book club. It's in her book life.
I didn't even know there was
That's
a film
yes,
version.
Paul. So that's how good this book was.
Good to know. All right, Paul.
I just wanted to clarify what you were talking about. Like when I was pointing out the word disturbing earlier, I was thinking about it in terms of like the actual like historical depictions of the slaves being treated poorly. I didn't know we were talking about like the book as a whole in that moment. Like this book is fucking disturbing as fuck. You know, it's like a horror novel. You know, like what we talked about. But yeah, I love this book. I love Morrison's writing. She has like a brilliant flow, and her use of like I can't describe anything about when it comes to style. I'm just like, this works or it doesn't, but this really
Good,
fucking
bad.
works. You know, but it's real good. It's like amazing, you know. But I think one of the strongest elements of the book for me is that like it can turn something that is, you know, very historically known in our society or whatever, and make it more real than just a historical depiction. To me, that's like not necessarily what great fiction has to do, but that's one thing that it can do. Like it can make something that's historical even like more prominent in your mind. Like a good fiction novel can do that, and I feel like she succeeded like wholeheartedly. But that's funny. My actual score is also 4.5. I was going to do 4.444445 just to be funny, but I was like, I'm going to
4.124, yeah.
Yeah, 4.1.
Some sort of joke one.
Yeah.
But yeah, 4.5 for me too.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I think this book is incredible and important. And if just want to reiterate, if you think people should not read this book, you're a hog. And I
Don't animalize people. If one, you should have known better after
true.
this.
No, you're right. I'm sorry. And I personally hate you.
There we go. That's fine. That's fine.
If you are at all sympathetic to that, you know, it's you know, yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. Morrison's writing is incredible and evocative and gets inside you in ways that are unpredictable and unreplicable. I think, you know, yeah, I don't know what else to say other than that. You know, this book is. I think it should be required much even more than it is currently in terms of people's understanding of the slavery and America and just kind of bringing that home in a way that, you know, I think talking abstractly about history and getting the facts in order is obviously important, but there's a way in which it doesn't quite nail it into your heart the way that a book like this does.
You kind of have to put flesh on it. Weirdly enough, like
Yes.
Beloved,
Yes.
and like have it terrorize you sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is unprecedented, but I was already going to give it a dead on 4.5 as well.
Get out of here!
No, dead ass. So this may be a first.
Damn.
It is a first.
For the show. Yeah.
4.5 the show.
The show.
Oh my god,
I hate my life.
that was good. That was really good.
Yeah, that was good. So,
Shit.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
Wow.
Okay. Here's a quick little bonus follow up. What keeps it from you know, like perfection type score for everybody?
That's a good question.
That is a great question. I feel like it might be the fact that I had read it prior a little bit or something like that. And potentially, and this might, I don't know if this is controversial at all, but like it's not my experience.
True.
And it might just stop it from like hitting my brain that in that particular way, just for that reason, that distance. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's like probably actually true for me too. I just feel like if I resonated with it more personally, because I feel like my fives or like my 4.6s and above selfishly have been like ones that have personally resonated with me. So maybe that's the only thing, but
Yeah. That
I feel like
personal connection.
I weirdly did think like why isn't this a 5? Why isn't it, so
No, I think
maybe I
that's
could come back
I
to it,
think
but-
that's legit. Like something that resonates with you deep on a deeply personal level. It's that gives it that extra push. I think that's totally fair. I mean, and I think it makes sense. I mean, yeah, for me, I think like, I guess I guess a couple things, and we'll talk about it more in the Patreon. I have some questions and or like. And I know this is the shout outs to the Discord who made the Charlie Rose reference. if you haven't watched Charlie Rose's interview with Toni Morrison, don't, unless you want to get really angry.
We'll do it. It's just it's informative in a painful way. Yeah.
it's very
Exactly.
painful.
But he's
terrible.
it's not great. But I did have some questions or reservations about the way most of the white characters were depicted, like the Garners and the Bodwins, and Amy, in the sense that I almost like, I guess it was weird that it felt weird to me that there's only really one like truly cruel, villainous white character in the book, namely the school teacher.
Yeah.
And that felt a little bit unrealistic to me, or like, I don't know, it gave me some weird vibes, and I'm my mind is totally open to being convinced that this is an unfounded worry, but I don't know, it just felt weird that like the plantation owners were nice and the white people that they meet in Cincinnati are nice, and I don't know.
I think that maybe let's talk about it in the Patreon.
Let's
but
save
I
it.
think
Let's
that
save
was-
it.
I think that was like definitely a choice.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm totally. I do want to talk about it. I'm totally open to changing my mind on it. But that was something that I don't know. I felt a little bit weird about or unsure about. And I also
I think it relates to like Sweet Home and the Sweet Home men in particular.
Yeah.
And their idea of like being like a good slave or a good man and a slave. Like it
Yeah.
relates to,
we'll talk about
Yeah.
it.
And who the Garners would know and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. And the other thing is, well, I didn't totally love the ending. I kind of thought, I guess I wish we could have seen a little bit more into the lives of the larger community before they kind of come in at the end and help Setha, because that felt, I don't want to use like a fucking Mauler like Deus Ex Machina type thing. But it was verging on that a little bit for me, and I feel like if we had gotten a little bit more insight into the other people around them in the community, in their sort of day-to-day lives and how they thought, like there are a couple conversations that we get, but I feel like I sort of wanted more of that in terms of building up to and justifying the ending.
I know what you mean. Like the narrative was fragmentary already, even with its sort of concentration of characters that it was ever sort of depicting the perspectives of or whatever. Like having a random not throwaway, but like a random cutaway or whatever to the internal workings of various residents.
Yes.
And the differences of their circumstances and also their perspective on 124 would have been an interesting thing.
And it's maybe just literarily that would have made the book too unwieldy or too long or whatever if it went down that road.
Yeah.
But who knows? So that's sort of my justification for the score. All right, everybody. Well, that's it for now. As we've said again, we'll come hang out on the Patreon. We'll be there for a while for this one probably. And thanks so much for listening.
Bye.
Bye. And you guys look great today.
You do too.
I mean, I meant the listeners.
He meant the audience.
Oh. I forget sometimes that we're talking to an audience.
You look good too, Paul.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.